Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Well, I don't know, maybe it's the people online who are talking to me because the people in the room are looking at me like, are you talking to me? Hey, everybody, it is 9:15-ish a.m. Central Time, and that means it's time for the Sunday morning Science of Mind class, right here in person and online, hosted by CSLDallas. My name is Tracy Brown. And what we do, if this just happens to be your first time with us, is we go through the Science of Mind textbook, page by page, paragraph by paragraph, sometimes line by line, so that we can understand it better, so that we can deepen our appreciation for this faith, this philosophy, and this way of life. And then we talk about how what we've read applies to us or what questions we have. So today we are going to begin with page 94. We're going to start a new section in this chapter called Soul, and the section begins with how we use the creative principle. So I'm going to pretty much just read that paragraph, which consists of this entire section. This is kind of strange. Ernest Holmes tends to go on and on and on, but for this section, there is one paragraph. Let's see what he has to say. How we use the creative principle. If, through the law, thought is creative, we cannot say that one thought will create while another will not. We must admit that all thought is creative, according to the impulse, emotion, or conviction behind the thought. Our theory is that the medium is a universal, simultaneous presence, and in this presence, all live, and that whatever is known at one point in it is known at all points instantly. So if we, practicing this principle in Los Angeles, declare the truth about John Smith, who lives in New York, or any other place in the world, the speaking of his name draws the law into the vibration of his personality, his individuality. Mentally, physically, spiritually, he is now in it. We have, so to speak, tuned into the keynote of his being. This being is also at the center of our being. Therefore, the mental work is done in our being for him, but it must and does operate through law. This law is subjective. End of paragraph, end of section. Simple, right? Be careful. You shake your head yes, and I'm tempted to go, well, explain it then, right? It is a natural progression of what we've been reading up until this point. So I'm going to just go back a little bit, a couple of pages, as the reminder. So we're reading chapter 4, right, which is all about soul. And for context, before I repeat the paragraph, if you recall, or if you've been following with us, we've been looking at the previous chapter was spirit, right? And before that, we looked at mind, the greatest discovery. So we are still in the first third of the book, which is educating us about God, about spirit, about the universal presence and the way it works. We are not into the middle of the book where we start saying this is how it applies or replicates itself in the human experience. We are right now working with understanding the universality and the nature of the law, the nature of spirit. So we've already done spirit, now we're on soul, and then the next section will be body, or the physical nature of the triune nature of spirit. So in this chapter 4 on soul, there was a review of the creative medium, subjective intelligence, law, and now we're on how we use this creative principle. So, we are lucky. This is a short paragraph. I'm going to read it again, and then we're going to talk about it. So now this time in hearing it, be thinking about how this makes sense to you, how it applies in your life, or what specific question you have because it's not making any sense at all. That is an option. Okay, so how we use the creative principle. And again, this is all in the context of soul, subjective mind, the law, right? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about soul. How we use the creative principle at the top of page 94. If through the law thought is creative, we cannot say that one thought will create while another will not. Stop. We cannot say that one thought is creative while another is not. Continuing. We must admit that all thought is creative, but it is creative according to the impulse, emotion, and conviction behind the thought. So all thought is creative, and it creates in correlation to the impulse of it, the thought, the emotion connected to the thought, and the conviction related to that thought. Next sentence. Our theory is that the medium is a universal simultaneous presence, and in this presence all live, and that whatever is known at one point in this presence is known at all points. Okay? Our theory is that thought is a medium that is everywhere present, always active, and known in all points of the experience. Next sentence. So, if we're practicing this principle in Dallas, Texas, and declare the truth about Mary Davidson in Nairobi, Kenya, the speaking of that name draws the law into vibration with that person or personality. So I can speak my word about Mary Davidson in Nairobi, Kenya, and by speaking that name, I draw the law into the vibration of that person / personality. Mentally, physically, spiritually, that person is now in my thought, in the thought that is everywhere present. We have, so to speak, tuned into the keynote of this individualization. This being is also at the center of our being. Therefore, the mental work is done in our being for that person. But it must, and it does operate through law, because the law is subjected. The law is subject to the impulse of the thought that I have put into motion. That is the creative principle that we are using in order to create a changing condition. I don't know about you all online, but at least there's some smiles on faces in the room. Now, I don't know if those are smiles of confusion or if they are smiles of, wow, that actually makes sense. But we'll find out in a minute from you and from the people in the room. But I'm going to turn to Ryan and ask him to give us some instructions so that we can make this an easy process. Good morning.
Well, good morning to you too, Dr. Tracy Brown, and welcome back. I know that you were out there, and I saw you at CSL Kenya. That was amazing to see out there. And welcome to all the folks here that are joining us in the room. Hi, how you doing? And for all of those who are joining us all over the globe via Facebook and on Zoom, we are so glad to have the community with us today. And as Dr. Tracy said, this is an engaging conversation that we're having, so we encourage you to participate. Oh, snap, I got somebody right here behind me who's going to help us out. This is our rock star, Patrick. He's going to be handing off the microphone to those who are here in the room. And for those who are joining us on Zoom, you can hit the raise your hand icon, and I do see that we have somebody online. And then also for those who are joining us via Facebook, feel free to put your questions or comments inside the chat, and I can bring those into the room, as well as for those who are in Zoom. And I always like to remind folks that if you put a question or comment in the chat, I'll keep those anonymous, so that way we can continue to have a safe container for spiritual growth. So I guess I'll go here online first, and then let's poll the room and see if we've got somebody in the room. So
Perfect.
Marjorie, would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself and join the conversation?
Hello.
Hey, Marjorie.
Hey. Thank you for answering my raised hand there. Yeah, I'm looking at the paragraph, and of course I've read this before, but every time I read it, something else pops up to me. And what's popping up is this notion that one thought will create while another thought will not. We cannot say that one thought will create, another thought will not. And it doesn't seem to distinguish between so-called positive thoughts or negative thoughts. It just says thought. So, but it does say creative. So I'm just curious, can we take from this, or can we kind of, presume or assume or kind of figure it out? Are they talking about here that this is impartial, impersonal, that is not only thoughts that are going to be for the good necessarily, but this same law, this same medium can also be conducive, or whatever that word, can also create negatively? Is that a word? I don't even know. I don't know if my question is making sense to you, but I'm just going to throw it out there and see what kind of response you might have.
What a great question, Marjorie. And your question makes perfect sense. I'm just letting you, if you're like me, you're thinking and processing as you're talking. And so this is a very commonly asked question in classes. And so we're going to go back to some basics. Basic number one, when we are talking about spirit, and we are talking about the universal nature of spirit, there is no positive, negative, good, or bad. There's no judgment. And so we're talking about the way that it works and that it's designed to work. We're in soul, which is subjective mind. And so it is subject to whatever intention has been set or claimed. So the whole idea of positive thoughts and negative thoughts is a human thing and a human judgment. And spirit simply is responding to what the thought or the intention is and saying yes. So you hear us often say, or many of you have heard me say, the universe only has one word in its vocabulary, and that word is?
Yes.
And so whether the outcome of responding to that thought is considered on a human basis as positive or negative, is a story we've made up or a story that we have chosen. And people can do the same things in 5 different countries, and 3 of those countries will say that's negative and 2 of them will say it's positive, which is a reminder that we're the ones making up the rules based on how we want our society or our family or our CSL center to operate. So there is neither positive nor negative in the description of creative principle and how it works. So understanding the intention is set, the thought is a representation of life expressing, and spirit is for life and more life. So it's a really good question. And I love too that it came at the beginning of this particular paragraph with the sentence of, we cannot say that one thought will create while another will not. But the next sentence is what reminds us that all thoughts do not manifest evenly, equally, exactly the same, because the thought is creative and it is impacted or affected by the impulse that generated the thought, the emotion that's connected to the thought, and the conviction behind the thought. So there can be thoughts in the process of creation that are a kind of a random idea that may not generate the immediate result of a thought that is strong, has a lot of emotion. Maybe it's a life or death situation, and the emotion and the conviction to having something be different may be 1,000 times stronger. And so all the thoughts are creative, but they are impacted by impulse, emotion, and conviction. So, Ryan.
Yes, I see we have a question over here, so we're going to go to the audience. Yep, here we go. And just say your name and ask your question.
Good morning, Shauna.
Good morning, Shauna.
So this is an impulse and emotion, but I can't believe we're talking about this today. So I've led a global prayer group for about 10 years of many people, many backgrounds, many faiths. And last night my son called me, desperately afraid because a dear friend, Josh Meyer, had flu, and it went into pneumonia, and he's now sepsis. And supposedly, doctors say, his organs have shut down, and he has 24 to 72 hours to know. And he has 2 children under the age of 3. And so last night, it's these moments when I get these messages that I think, I don't know how long I can do this prayer group. And then I arrive here. And so I'm just thinking about Josh Meyer here and thinking about what we believe and asking everybody else here to believe it too.
Beautiful, Shauna. And take a breath, everyone. Because what is known right here and right now is that, along with Shauna, it is easy for every one of us present to stand with Shauna in knowing that only best outcomes can be delivered and manifest. And using the power of thought and the power of mental conditioning without knowing exactly what the outcome can be, will be, should not be, what is true is that it is the power of prayer and the power of intention and the power of love to have many hearts breathing together, take a breath, and knowing together that all is unfolding in the only way that it can, and that the universe is everywhere present, doing its job of lifing as each individual and every other form of creation. And so we breathe together and we love each other and we send love out to everyone who needs it, who is open to receive it. And we claim our joined hearts by simply saying, and so it is. The power of creative thought. Ryan, are we in the room or are we online?
Good question. After that, I think we're a little in outer space. We're in that conscious collection there. Would anybody like to speak here in the room? If not, I think we can go a little further in the book. I see Darlene over there. Get a mic to her real quick.
I'm Darlene, so totally confused. But I'm going to try to get this question out because a couple of things stand out in here for me. Like when we're speaking of the name that draws the law into the vibration of his personality, and the other one is this being is also at the center of our being. Therefore, the mental work is done at our being for him, but it must and does, but it's that but. It must, therefore, it must and does operate through law. This law is subjective. And this feeling is coming up for me that I can do mind treatment or think about my grandson who has an autoimmune issue, but yet it has to go through his personality and what is actually going on through him. Is that what that means? Does that question make sense? That this truth that I speak of his higher being, but yet it still has to be according to what is actually going on with his personality? Is that
the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get out.
I love this question because it gives me an opportunity to confuse you even more.
Great.
So, okay, first I want to respond to the question in the context of where we are in the textbook, which we are talking about universal spirit. So for a minute, I'm going to talk about it at the universal level, not the specific level of the description related to the question. So in the universal level, there's one thought that's always happening. If it's happening here, it's happening there. And basically that the universal ability to respond to that thought is not limited by geography or the location. Key point. So in the description in the book, it does use names and it does use specific cities. The key point here is understanding that it's not limited, that the universe is not limited. Spirit is not limited by geography because it is everywhere present, and it is the same everywhere where it is present. That's one level. At the same time, the reference to the personality of the one named is an indication that the universe only and always says yes, and that you can really count on that. There's no question about that. But it does, where you got caught up because you know a lot, is the very, well, second to the last sentence, but it must and does operate through law, and the law is subjective. So when we put the human element into the equation, are the treatments that I do for you affected by your openness, willingness, readiness? Absolutely. Doesn't mean that my treatment didn't work. If I am treating for you to have a healthy body and make healthy food choices and exercise choices, because you've asked me to pray for you in that regard, but instead of completely changing your diet with things that you can control, you are continuing to eat the way you ate 5 years ago, and then being mad when you go to the doctor and the doctor says, you have a lot of inflammation and here are the numbers to prove it. Doesn't mean my treatment didn't work. It means that it was also responding to the law based on your behavior and your actions. So it's not that it's competing or fighting. It's saying Tracy is very clear about Darlene's desire for healthy outcomes and Darlene's intention to eat healthy and to exercise and to make good choices. And the universe says, yes, that's great. And at the same time, Darlene is over here eating this and this and this and never exercising. And the universe says, yes, I'm supporting Darlene and what she's doing. Now, I can use that example because you've been all over Facebook with all the healthy food choices that you've been making and the impact that it's having. So if I were doing treatment for that, and then in your behavior, you're doing the things that support that, then the results start showing up. But the universe is responding to, wow, 8+ billion people and their ideas and their thoughts and their choices, and responding to that in the second sentence based on the impulse, the level of emotion, and the conviction, all at the same time. And not only is the universe responding to those very conscious and sometimes subconscious behaviors and choices and impulses, but also the universe is responding in creative principle to the wind blowing and the rain and the snow and the mountains and the volcanoes and the way that the rivers are operating and the fish in the water are swimming. So we are dealing with a universal intelligence that is not just brain power or emotion power, but the intelligence of how everything has been designed to work together for good. Take a breath. Even I have to take a breath on that one. Ryan, what you got?
Yes, I see Anita has her hand raised here. Anita, do you want to go ahead and join the conversation?
Hey, good morning, Ryan. Dr. Tracy. Yeah, I really like that sentence, that second sentence, right, where it's dependent on my emotion and my feeling and everything that's back behind the thought. Because, I don't know about you, but there have been times in my life where I've kind of gotten really upset and angry about something. And I'm just like, I just wish that person was blah, and, but yet when I calm down again, I wish no harm or malice to that person whatsoever.
Yes.
And so I'm really grateful that every single thought that flies through my head as this human presence that I am does not actually take foothold.
Yes.
And outplay. And so, that's why we teach, that we need to be guardians of our thought.
Yes.
So that we are heading down a pathway that, is to bring all of the things that are the qualities of the infinite, which is love and peace and harmony and joy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just kind of like really focusing on that second sentence.
Oh, Anita, thank you so much. And I love that you highlighted that as well for several reasons, but I want to take off a little bit on impulse again, because I think a lot of times when we use the word impulse, or when people read this paragraph and they say impulse, that it's easy to think of, oh, like it's an immediate impulse and it's going to happen quickly. But if it's really simply an impulsive reaction to something, and it's not a thought that we've had a lot, it really does get buried, even if there's strong emotion to it, and then the universe begins to parse out the pattern of our thoughts. So conviction is, in my opinion, one of the most important. How much conviction do you have? And then emotion also strongly. What is your emotion about that? About whatever it is that you're asking for. Now, again, I'm going to say, just because I have to remind myself as well, that we are in the part of the book that we're talking about the innate nature of the universe. So it is tracking all of that, not just from a human perspective, but also from just the nature of life itself. So if you think about the seasons of the year, going from summer to fall and fall to winter and winter to spring, it's like, oh, well, how might that relate, even in the context of impulse, responding to different weather changes and conviction. All of us have seen a dandelion grow through a crack in concrete. It's like, what kind of conviction did that dandelion seed have to be like, oh, there's concrete up there. I don't care. I feel the sun and I'm going toward the sun, right? So challenge yourself a little bit to not only get stuck in the human definition of these terms that we use, but how do they show up in nature beyond the human mindset? Okay, anybody else in the room? We've got time for one more question or comment. I see a hand that is barely being raised over here. All right, what you got? And say your name for everybody.
I would be bold. My name is Tammy. Is it okay if I piggyback on what she just said and ask a related question to that?
What am I going to say? No.
Well,
Now, Tammy, you've been around long enough.
I guess that was silly. My bad. So, in that, I get that we are all related. Universe, we are all one together. And I feel what she says. When somebody does something and you're angry, you don't, well, at the beginning you want something to happen to them, and then you're like, no, I don't. But what happens when you still mad and you realize that you are one with them and we are all one together, and you're trying to forgive, and maybe try is the wrong word. You want to forgive in your heart, and the person keeps repeating that thing, and you're like, and I ask myself, how did I create this? Sometimes, and that's not guilt, blame, or shame. I know we don't guilt, blame, or shame. I get that. And I get that person has free will or whatever. I just don't know how to resolve my own anger around the situation for today. And I'm trying to let it go.
Ooh, there is so much there.
Okay, I'm done. All right. As that, do we have it?
Can anybody relate? Yes, I will repeat Willie's question. Can anybody relate? No. Because we're good spiritually grounded people who are just like Tammy. Way too often, way more often than we'd like to admit. All right, so we have the opportunity. So I love this because it's so real. It's so real. We are human beings having a human experience and trying to be guided by what we know is spiritual truth and spiritual grounding. But that does not mean we don't have the human experience. What it means is that we have the opportunity to then apply the spiritual principle and expand. Now, there are several things that I'm going to say that may or may not seem connected, but I just don't want to forget them. And they're not in any order, except for me remembering them at this moment. So one of the things that I want to say very quickly is that when there is a person or a situation or a condition, and it continues and continues and it continues to show up in your life in a way that you know is not the way you want it to, that is the perfect time for you to work with a practitioner or spiritual coach. Because what happens is that the practitioner or the spiritual coach is looking at it from a different perspective and helping you replace the false belief or whatever the default or pattern reaction is with a new reaction. So that's number one. Number two, you can do a lot of that on your own, but the key is this. When the condition repeats itself over and over, whether it's an individual or a situation, we have to stop thinking that person or that situation is going to change because we want it to change. And you even said it. It's like, I know they are going to be who they're going to be. I know they have the right to be whoever they are. I still want them to change, and I want them to stop behaving that way around me. But Maya Angelou reminded us, when people show you who they are, believe them. So you finished the sentence, right? So if I believe that's who that person is, then what I get to control is either my connection with them, my interaction with them, my exposure to them, my being in their environment versus they're in my environment. What boundaries do I set? What choices do I make? If it's someone I actually cannot make choices about and create distance or boundaries, I still then become responsible for, okay, what do I change, or I am choosing to change, this will not trigger me anymore. Because it's who they are. Why would I expect them to be any different? That's who they are. When things like this happen, this is how they're going to behave. And guess what? They don't have the kind of power over me to make me upset or angry or whatever the list of emotional reactions is. I don't give them that power. Easy for me to say. And it's as challenging for me as it is for any one of you, because I've been in lots of those situations as well. But I can say that when I took responsibility for either changing the environment, my environment, or changing me and simply accepting, when I am around Randy Craig, this is the way he acts, and I don't like it, but I'm not going to be triggered by it, because guess what? I can predict it. He is who he is, right? And so we have to do, when we say we have to do our work, it really is choosing like how we're going to handle them never being any different. And it sucks, but it's very spiritual. And it works. And then the one other thing that came to mind related to that is don't beat up on yourself. Because there are 8 billion people in the world, and we all have situations related to work, or the communities that we're in, or our neighbors, or right, the people we work with. I have clients all over the country, and there are some clients who I don't enjoy working with as much as others, but what I've trained myself to do around that is this. Oh, I'm working with this client, and this project that we're working on is going to be for the next 6 to 9 months. And then in September, we're going to be done, and I don't have to accept more work from them in the future. And so every meeting, I sit there and I go, and I, turn the camera off on Zoom and roll my eyes and take a deep breath, turn my camera back on and go, that's really a great idea. Here are 3 options. And then I move into, I am here because they're paying me to help them achieve some goal. And I get really focused on, I don't have to like them, and I don't have to like the way they treat me or other people in their company, because this is time limited. And 5 years from now, I am still going to be me, living guided by spiritual principle, and I really probably will never see them again. So what happens in these 9 months is not defining my life. So you can put some boundaries in that regard. And it's all using principle, actually, not psychology, which is a whole nother conversation we don't have time for. So, Ryan, do we have anybody online for one final? Or are we going to close out with some announcements?
Well, I do see Marjorie does have her hand raised again. Marjorie, did you have a last comment you wanted to share?
Unmute, Marjorie.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, I just wanted to come back around to the, they're not using the terminology of local and non-local or duality and non-duality. But I think when you're talking, when they are talking about the infinite, or they're talking about the presence being everywhere, 100% everywhere simultaneously, and then it talks about, coming into the individual, or the individual is drawn into that non-local awareness when they speak the name. So, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to in relation to the conversation about anger or specific situations, I'm kind of thinking that the anger is a natural human emotion that can be used for constructively for the good. It can be the impulse for change, for positive change, if they use the anger, if the anger is used as an impulse to create something new. So I think we're the ones that are putting the positive negative on the emotion, which it doesn't necessarily have to be one way or the other. It can be both. So I just wanted to put that piece in there. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Marjorie. And yes, there is nothing that is a judgment except that which we define it for the use of our human experience. And so, right, there's no duality in the nature of the infinite, and there is really no duality in experiencing emotion. Every emotion is simply giving us information. And then our choice about what to do in response to that emotion is a separate process. So the emotion itself is one thing. It provides us information in our human experience, and then we choose how we will interpret and or respond to or react to the emotion. So yeah, that's a whole different conversation than just what is the creative process or the creative principle, especially in the context of the infinite nature, the divine nature of spirit itself. So we are in the chapter on soul, and next week we will be going into mind and ether and how can spirit create, and the soul reasons deductively, and subjectivity never is an entity. Oh my goodness, this is such a rich chapter. So I hope that you will hang with us and that you will dive into reading more of this chapter on your own between Sundays if it is interesting to you. Ryan, before we close, do we have a couple of announcements?
Yeah, I just wanted to make mention to everybody here in the room and online. We've got some workshops that are going to be starting here at the end of the month. One is Make Shift Happen from Good to Great. This is a workshop led by Reverend Karen. It's going to be a short 90-minute workshop there to teach you all about how you can go from a good life to a great life. So that should be a great one to experience, and that's available both online and in person. And the next following day, that Monday, is one that I really recommend. It's a 5-week course. It's called Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. And the name of the course is exactly what you do, right? It's you go in there, you learn the fundamentals of the science of mind, and you change your thinking and you change your life. And so that's going to be starting on Monday. And for the folks online, I'm going to go ahead and post that in the chat. And for the folks here in the room, there is a poster over here. You can scan the UR code and get signed up for those today. So that's all I had to say. Oh, and the beautiful artwork here by Kathy Cromer. She'll be here on the last Sunday of the month for an artist meet and greet. So yes, our iconic Richard is getting a good pan shot of it now.
Beautiful, beautiful art. So I hope everybody is enjoying their Lunar New Year. It also is the big game of Sunday, so hope your favorite team does well. And we will see you again next Sunday, 9:15 a.m. Central Time, right here at CSL Dallas.